most people who disrespect you don't even know they're doing it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes you are the one doing it without even realizing. Unintentional disrespect is a silent destroyer. It doesn't announce itself, it just slowly kills trust. I remember sitting across from my friend one evening. The coffee between us had gone cold, and she was trying to hold herself together, but I could see the cracks forming. Her voice was low, her words barely stitched together, and she was telling me about her breakup. The kind of heartbreak that steals your breath, the kind that changes how you see yourself in the mirror. I nodded. I offered the usual empty phrases. You're strong. You'll get through this. And then I did what so many of us do. I changed the subject. I moved us away from the pain because I thought that's what she needed. I thought I was helping her by pulling her out of the sadness. I thought I was protecting her from staying in something heavy. But days later, I got a text I'll never forget. It simply said, "You made me feel like my pain wasn't worth your time." That's the thing about unintentional disrespect. It rarely comes with malice. It comes with disconnection. It shows up when we're uncomfortable with pain, when we're too rushed to sit in someone's story, when we mistake silence for compassion and busyness for love. There's this quiet kind of harm we do when we're too afraid to stay with someone's sadness. We think we're rescuing them, when really, we're running from them. Psychologists tell us that emotional validation is one of the deepest human needs. It's not enough to hear people, we need to see them. And when we move on too quickly, when we fail to hold space, when we minimize by accident, the other person's nervous system feels abandoned. We don't have to solve their pain. We don't have to explain it away. We don't have to pull them out of it. We just have to stay long enough to say, your feelings make sense. I don't need you to be okay yet. It's uncomfortable to sit in someone else's storm without trying to be the hero. It's awkward to let silence stretch without rushing to fill it. But sometimes that's the greatest act of love. To stay present in someone's sadness without fear, without judgment, without needing to fix it. The hardest lesson I've learned is that listening is not a bridge to the next thing. It is the thing. It is the healing. People don't need you to carry their pain. They just need to know you won't set it down before they're ready. People don't remember who solved their problems. They remember who sat with them in silence. I remember the moment like it just happened. We were in a circle of friends, sharing stories, teasing each other like we always did. And then I pushed too far. I asked a question that went a little deeper, one they clearly didn't want to answer. They smiled awkwardly and said, "I don't really want to talk about that." And instead of stepping back, I laughed. I brushed it off. I said, "Oh, come on, don't be like that. We're all friends here." I thought I was being lighthearted. I thought I was making the conversation fun. But in that moment, I bulldozed their boundary. They didn't say anything else. They just went quiet. I remember the way they pulled back, not with words, but with something deeper, a soft retreat, like they just folded themselves up in front of me. And it hit me later, with a kind of aching shame. I didn't respect the first no. The thing about boundaries is they're not always shouted. They're often whispered. They come with nervous smiles, hesitant words, and a hope that you'll listen the first time. But so often, we don't. We think we know better. We think we get to decide when someone's walls should come down. That's how unintentional disrespect sneaks in, not because we're cruel, but because we're careless. We tell ourselves, "I was just playing." We say, "I didn't mean anything by it." But here's what I've learned. Intentions don't protect people. Boundaries do. Psychology is clear. The most profound trust is built when people feel safe to say no without fearing punishment, guilt, or pressure. When someone sets a boundary, even a small one, they're not pushing us away. They're giving us a map to love them well. But when we cross that line, when we minimize it, when we press just a little harder, we're telling them, your comfort is less important than my curiosity. And that cuts deeper than we think. I've come to understand that honoring someone's boundaries is not about agreeing with them. It's not about whether they make sense to me. It's about respecting that their no is sacred ground. It's about choosing connection over control. And sometimes we hurt people by holding on too tightly when what they really need is for us to release. I had to learn the hard way that pushing someone past their limit, even gently, even playfully, leaves wounds that can outlast our friendship. We don't earn closeness by tearing down walls. We earn closeness by proving we can stand outside those walls without trying to break in. When someone says no, believe them the first time. Love doesn't beg. There was a time in my life when I believed that giving advice was the highest form of love. If someone I cared about came to me with a problem, I would jump in almost immediately with suggestions, steps, solutions. I thought I was helping. I thought I was showing up. I thought fixing was loving. I remember one conversation vividly. Someone I deeply care about came to me, completely unraveling. She had just lost her job, her confidence was shattered, and her words were shaky. Before she could even finish, I started handing out advice like I was some kind of expert. You should update your resume right now. You need to start networking immediately. You know what you should do? Try freelancing until you find something better. I thought I was saving her. I thought I was being supportive, but her face fell. Her voice got quieter. She eventually said, "You make me feel like I can't figure this out on my own." That sentence hit me harder than any insult ever could. Because she was right. I wasn't really there for her. I was there to make myself feel useful. I couldn't sit with her pain, so I rushed to solve it. I've come to realize this. Uninvited advice often feels like an attack on someone's competence, even when it's wrapped in love. When we offer advice without being asked, we're not always saying, "I love you." Sometimes we're accidentally saying, "You're not capable. I don't trust you to handle this. Let me take over because you're getting it wrong." Psychologists call this the unsolicited advice trap. It's a sneaky little habit that often comes from our own anxiety, our inability to sit with someone's struggle, our need to control, our discomfort with helplessness. We jump in with solutions, not because they need us to, but because we need to feel less powerless. But love isn't always action. Sometimes love is restraint. Sometimes love is saying, "I'm here. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to hold you." When we lead with advice, we can unintentionally create distance. When we lead with presence, we create safety. I had to learn to ask, do you want me to help, or do you just need me to hear you right now? And more often than not, people just want to be heard. They want to hear their own thoughts out loud without being interrupted, without being redirected. Advice should be an invitation, not an imposition. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can say to someone you love is not, "Here's what you should do," but "I trust you to figure this out, and I'll be right here no matter what you choose." That's what love sounds like. That's what respect feels like. Real love doesn't rush to rescue. It walks beside you while you rescue yourself. I remember the day a friend trusted me enough to share something deeply painful with me. She had just experienced a miscarriage, a loss so raw, so personal, that even speaking about it out loud required incredible courage. Her voice cracked as she described the emptiness, the weight in her chest, the silence that filled her house where a heartbeat was supposed to be. And do you know what I did? I panicked. I reached for the closest thing I could grab, my own story. Without even thinking, I said, I know exactly how you feel. I remember when I lost my job, I felt the same kind of grief. In that moment, I thought I was connecting. I thought I was being empathetic. I thought I was saying, you're not alone. But what I really did was hijack her pain. I made it about me. I centered my story when what she needed was someone to center hers. The thing about comparison is, it's so subtle. It doesn't always look like competition. Sometimes it disguises itself as empathy. But when we rush to share our own experiences in the middle of someone else's grief, it can sound like your story isn't unique. It can sound like, I've already felt what you're feeling, so let's not sit here too long. It can sound like, I understand you so quickly that we don't need to explore your story anymore. And that's how unintentional disrespect slides into the cracks, quietly, softly, in the form of well-meaning words. Psychology calls this comparative suffering. It's when we rank pain, measure grief, and try to fast-track healing by turning suffering into something familiar or manageable. But here's what I've learned. Pain doesn't need to be matched. It needs to be witnessed. When we compare someone's pain to our own, we often do it because we are uncomfortable, we feel helpless, and we reach for something we know. But in that reaching, we can pull the focus away from them and back onto us. I can't count how many times I've made this mistake, thinking I was building a bridge when I was actually closing a door. I had to learn that being with someone in their pain doesn't require me to bring mine into the room. Being with them doesn't mean I need to provide proof that I've suffered too. Being with them means I am willing to sit in their story as a guest, not as the main character. I've learned to simply say, that sounds incredibly painful. I'm here. And then I stop. I let their story breathe. I let them lead. I let them be the center, because real connection isn't about inserting yourself. It's about holding space for them to fully be in their own experience without interruption. When we constantly compare, we don't validate, we minimize. When we constantly share our stories, we don't join them, we overshadow them. And when we constantly measure suffering, we don't build closeness. We create distance. The most loving thing we can do is to resist the urge to make it about us, to let them feel what they feel fully without having to shrink it to make us more comfortable. Stop trying to win the suffering Olympics. Just be there. There was a moment I will never forget, not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it was the quiet kind of pain, the kind that lingers. I had hurt someone I cared about. I said something sharp, careless, in a moment when I wasn't thinking. When they later told me how much it stung, I gave the fastest apology I could muster. I'm sorry you feel that way. I remember delivering it like I was closing a tab on a browser. Quick, efficient, polite, and they just stared at me. There was this long, hollow silence between us. Finally, they said, "That just made it worse." And that was when I realized what I thought was an apology was actually an escape. I wasn't apologizing to make things right. I was apologizing to move on, to clear my conscience, to wrap the conversation in a pretty little bow so I wouldn't have to sit in the discomfort of what I had done. Unintentional disrespect is sometimes dressed in the language of politeness. We say the right words, but we miss the depth. We say, "I'm sorry you feel that way," but what we mean is, "I need this to be over now." Psychology calls this a non-apology. It's when we center our own discomfort instead of centering the pain we've caused. It's when we focus on clearing our name instead of clearing the air. It's when we care more about appearing good than actually being accountable. I've learned that a real apology is not about defending your intent. It's not about saying, I didn't mean to. It's about fully facing the impact you've had, even when it feels like a punch to your pride. Sometimes the most painful part of apologizing is admitting that you were capable of causing harm, even if you never intended to. But that's the threshold of growth. That's where real love lives. I think about all the times I tried to protect my ego with soft, distant apologies. I'm sorry if I hurt you. I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry you misunderstood. What I was really saying was, let's move past this as quickly as possible so I don't have to sit in my guilt. And what I was doing was cutting the other person off from the healing they deserved. We don't just owe people the right words. We owe them our full presence in the moment of repair. A real apology sounds like, I see how I hurt you. I take full responsibility for what I said and how it landed. I'm not here to explain it away. I'm here to make it right. There's something profoundly healing about being willing to stand inside the mess you made without trying to sweep it up too quickly. An apology should not be the end of the conversation. It should be the beginning of rebuilding trust. It's not about clearing your name. It's about closing the distance your words or actions created. And sometimes the most powerful apology doesn't even start with, I'm sorry. Sometimes it starts with, tell me what I did that made you feel that way. I'm listening, I'm staying. That's when healing begins. Don't apologize to move on. Apologize to move closer. Most disrespect in this world isn't screamed, it's whispered. It's accidental. It's casual. It's the moment you didn't look up, the joke you didn't mean, the advice they didn't ask for. But kindness, real, raw, soul-honoring kindness, is intentional, it's patient, it's quiet, it's listening. The art of avoiding unintentional disrespect isn't about being perfect. It's about staying awake to how your presence lands. It's about choosing courage over comfort, again and again. Because love doesn't just show up in grand gestures. Sometimes love is simply this: being willing to see where you've hurt someone, even when you never meant to.